Okay, in this video we are going to learn about the tools that you will be using most often in my class. And everyone, depending on what table you sit at, you will get the table tool bin that matches the color of your stools and the paintbrush that hangs above it. So I'm at the red table, so I have the red table tool bin. All of the tool bins for each table are the same, and these are the most commonly used tools that we will be using in my class for ceramics. So I'm going to go through and tell you the names of each one and then common uses. When I tell you the uses, those are not necessarily the only uses for them. It is probably the most common uses, what I tend to use them for. So if you find another use for a tool, as long as you're not breaking that tool or causing damage to that tool, they may be able to be used in other ways other than what I'm going to show you. So I just want to throw that out there. And you will need to know the names of the tools and what they look like. So we'll continue to work on that. And you can always have this video to come back to if you need to watch it again. The other thing to notice, the table tool bins are labeled really well. They have the number of how many of each tool should be in there, the name of the tool, and then a picture of the tool. So keeping these nice and clean and organized is going to benefit you quite a bit. It's a lot easier to use tools that are nice and organized and clean. Okay, so big recommendation there. Keep things nice and organized and clean, use the labels. So first we have a ruler. So every tool bin is going to have some rulers in it. We know rulers are used for measuring, and we will use these rulers for measuring. Every project that you do will have size requirements, so you're going to want to be using your ruler so that you know that you're meeting those size requirements. The smaller rulers, or the thinner rulers, skinnier rulers, are inches on both sides, and then the wider rulers, there are inches on one side, centimeters on the other. So make sure that you're paying attention to that. I will always give you measurements in inches, so just so that you know that. The other thing that a ruler is nice for is a straight edge, so you can use it so that you know that you're cutting a nice straight line, okay? So every tool bin has rulers in it. Okay, next we're going to just go ahead and talk about needle tools. So each tool bin has 4 needle tools. They are kind of sharp on the end, so be careful. And you always want to make sure that you're putting them back into the table tool bin needle first so that nobody pokes themselves. Needle tools can be used for a couple different things. You saw me just cut with them, so they can be used as a cutting tool. The wrong end, or the opposite end of the cutting end, can be used to make circle impressions. Okay, so that would be like stamping or the impression decorating technique. Okay, you can also use this end to make smaller. You can use them to create piercings. So if I want to cut maybe a square out, okay, they would be sharp enough to cut all the way through. And then you can also use them to do carvings. Now, I will tell you, when you're carving into soft clay with a needle tool, it is going to create some crumbs around where you're cutting, and that will need to be cleaned up later. But if you want really fine, precise, or skinny lines, a needle tool is going to work well for that kind of design. Okay, so 4 needle tools. Next we have 4 fettling knives. Fettling knife is kind of a funny word, if you can see that. Fettling. Okay, and really good for cutting. Okay, I tend to use the needle tool for cutting, but the fettling knife works just as well, so you just kind of have to decide what you like. And then just like the needle tool, you can use the opposite end or the handle end to create circular impressions. Okay, and then you can also use the cutting end to create a different impression. most of the tools you can use to push in like a stamp to create impressions. So 4 fettling knives. Next we have 7 different modeling tools, wooden modeling tools, and a couple different uses for these, just like I've kind of been showing you with the other tools. Since all of the ends are different, they're all gonna create different impressions. This one I think looks kind of like a thumb and will also kind of create, if you overlap them, scales. So like fish scales or mermaid tail scales, okay? I also think that the end that looks like a thumb can be really good for blending 2 pieces of clay together. Okay, it can be nice to get into crevices with the modeling tools to smooth down in crevices. Okay, they can also be really nice for actually modeling. They are called modeling tools. So, you know, you can kind of push into your clay in a specific way. If you're modeling a face or something that you need to kind of, your fingers can't get into, the different modeling tool ends may be able to. Okay, so all different ends, really good for texture and smoothing. So those are 7 wooden modeling tools. Next, we have 3 large and 4 small ribbon tools. Okay, they're called ribbon tools because they have a ribbon-like edge on them. The larger ones do have a bit of a sharp edge, so be careful there. You'll notice that there are 3 different ones. These ones, I think the larger ones are really nice for carving out an area. So if I have a big solid piece of clay and I need it to be hollow, maybe I'm gonna take this one and I'm going to carve out that excess clay so that I have a bit more of a hollow area. You could obviously use these ones as well. So hollowing out areas, you can also use them if you have a project and it's really bumpy on the surface. These can also be used to kind of even out a surface. So I'm kind of really carefully scraping the surface to help some of the bumps go away. Okay, you can also do that just on a slab of clay. And if you gently scrape away from a slab of clay, it creates this coral-like texture that you could then go and slip and score onto the surface to create a raised texture as well. So, you know, they're all gonna create a slightly different shape. Okay, so those are the large ribbon tools, and then the small ribbon tools can be used for hollowing out areas. They are a bit smaller though, so you know, obviously if you have a smaller piece that needs to be hollowed out, that would work well, but they can also be used, especially this end, I think is nice for carving. It's going to make a bit of a thicker carved line, and you'll notice it takes clay out of the surface, and so that is a subtractive technique, okay? And obviously they're all gonna do slightly different shapes. You could also use it if you're trying to just kind of carve down into a surface, but not all the way through. So maybe you don't wanna pierce it, but you do wanna kind of indent that surface. Those can be good for that as well. Okay, so those are small and large ribbon tools. And then we have, and these don't really have an official name, but double-ended smoothing or wipeout tools. The white ends and the black ends are silicone, and I really like these. You can carve with them and it makes a really nice carved line. They're pretty soft and flexible. You can use them for smoothing. Okay, maybe getting down into a crevice, you can kind of roll them and that'll kind of smooth a little bit. But getting into places that maybe your fingers can't. And then just like most of the other tools, you can also use them to create a texture as an impression, okay? And then the blue ones, on the opposite end of the silicone, they have metal balls, and those are gonna be good for carving, but you'll notice with really soft clay, it does kind of create some clay crumbs that are gonna be more difficult to clean up, so you might wait until your clay gets a little bit harder, but they're all different sizes and they can be really nice for carving. So those are double-ended wipeout or smoothing tools, no official name for those ones. Okay, next we have 4 scoring kidneys or scoring tools, and these are used for scoring. So if you're trying to attach 2 pieces of clay, you always have to slip and score. So if I want to, maybe I'm gonna attach this piece right here. I can't just put it on there. I have to score it and slip it. So this tool, the scoring kidney, I'm gonna score both pieces, and you really wanna rough it up kind of like Velcro. I'm gonna add slip to one piece, and remember your slip is like your glue. Okay, so we don't want to be wimpy with our scoring or our slip. And then I'm going to wiggle that on there. And then maybe I'm going to take either my Wipeout tool, or I'm going to take a modeling tool, and I can go in there, get rid of those extra score marks that I don't need. Okay, or I could use the Wipeout tool to kind of get into that seam, into that crevice, so we have a nice strong connection there. So that is the scoring kidney. You can also use it for texture by pushing in, by scraping across if you want that kind of a texture. So basically all of the tools can be used for a texture in some way. And then finally we have the smooth kidney. So it looks just like the scoring kidney, it just doesn't have the teeth. Do be careful about running your finger along it, it can cut you. And the smoothing kidney, it's flexible. Okay, and it is really good for smoothing. So all of this work that I just did, and I am adding some pressure, and I'm going every which way, and it helps create a really nice smooth surface on your clay. So you can use it on a 3-dimensional project, a slab like this, and I just go in every which way. I'm not pushing super hard. It is nice that it is flexible. Okay, it does take some clay off the surface, and it is awesome for smoothing. So you can see a lot of that texture that I had put on there is now gone. And it's nice, especially if you have like a rounded project, think maybe like a bowl or a vase, you can kind of bend it around the project. So I really like those for cleanup and smoothing. So those are the tools that are in your table tool bin. Okay, and these are the tools that will always be at your table to use. So just make sure that you know the names and you know what they look like and you know how to use them.